Before you sleep, let me ask you something. Would you have the courage to investigate why a smiling child ended up in a medieval pyre? Or hold on to your sanity inside a temple where even the walls whisper your name? What if the bells of a monastery started ringing by themselves? Or an entire village heard voices during a plague and obeyed? These stories weren't made up. They happened. Some became footnotes in forgotten manuscripts. Others were never told out loud. Tonight, you'll walk through 4 of them, starting with the cruelest of all, a childhood burned in a public square, and the secret she took with her into the flames. Just one warning: whoever listens to the end never dreams the same way again. So fluff your pillow, dim the lights, and open your ears, because the story begins now. And if you want more echoes like this before bedtime, subscribe, leave a like, and tell me in the comments, which of these stories will haunt you the longest? You were born in a forgotten village somewhere deep in the European countryside, where the sky was permanently gray and mud had replaced the very concept of sidewalks. Your childhood didn't begin with tales of kings and castles. It began with a pig inside your house. Literally. Because in the 13th century, sharing a roof with a swine was perfectly acceptable, as long as it didn't snore louder than your father. Your mother said you were a smiley child. But let's be honest, back then surviving childbirth was already a solid reason to celebrate. You grew up surrounded by straw, fleas, and a vague smell of soup that seemed to always be simmering, even when there wasn't a single pot on the fire. Baths, only on feast days. Brushing teeth? What teeth? Your first memory is of your grandmother. Not the warm part, the part where she was carried out of the house wrapped in cloth, like an expired salami. Dying in your sleep back then was practically a luxury, and that's when you learned life was short. Very short. But you had no idea how creative it could be at throwing you into the flames. At 5, your routine was simple. Wake up, clean the pig's droppings, haul water for 600 meters, and try not to step on the embers of the communal stove. On a good day, no one yelled. On a bad day, someone sneezed 3 times in a row and got accused of witchcraft. But you? You still saw magic in every puddle. Your father was a proud peasant. Not because of what he planted, but because he could slice an onion into 8 perfect pieces using the same knife he used to scrape dung off the cart. Your mother, on the other hand, blamed everything on the humors if the child coughed. It was the bad air, or the goat's milk looked sideways. At 7, you saw a man hanged for stealing a turnip. A turnip! And no one thought it was strange. After all, if the turnip belonged to the church, technically, it was a divine theft. That's when you started to suspect that living with a pig might not be your biggest problem. And yet, there was beauty. You ran barefoot through the fields, imagined the clouds were castles, and dreamed of becoming someone important. Maybe a blacksmith, or even a scribe, if you could ever learn to read, which of course was about as likely as a cat learning Latin. But it was there, in that childhood of dirty smiles and silent punishments, that your story truly began. No one knew, not even you, that this curious, question-filled child was destined to live and burn in one of the most paranoid eras in history. After all, the Middle Ages didn't need much of a reason to hate you. All it took was looking the wrong way, or knowing Latin, or dreaming just a little too much. You never imagined that your sweet, mud-soaked childhood days would give way to something so loud. Because now, you are officially a teenager in the Middle Ages. And congratulations for that! Your main job is now surviving the shouting, the screams of pigs being slaughtered, of siblings fighting over scraps, of your mother when you disappear for 10 minutes, or your father when he finds out you stepped in the ground barley flour. Again. Your life now revolves around responsibilities no one asked if you wanted. Taking care of the chickens, even though they clearly hate you. Chasing rats out of the barn with a stick that seems to attract more rats than it scares. And of course, learning your father's trade, even if that trade is carving barrel lids for 16 hours a day. Ah, the glamour of family legacy. You don't study math. You are math. Especially when you have to calculate in your head, whether there's enough time to clean the stable, chop firewood, and fetch water from the river before nightfall. Spoiler, there isn't. It gets dark just as you're halfway to filling the bucket and growing a new blister on your hand. But despite everything, there is beauty. There's that girl who smiles at you from across the market square, even when your hair looks like wet straw. There are nights when the sky looks like a tapestry of stars and, in some strange way, you feel alive. And that's more than many can say. You start to develop valuable skills too, like pretending to be busy when your father's angry, or napping with your eyes open while holding a basket of turnips, or subtly hiding the fact that you broke the wooden shield while training alone with a broomstick. Medieval adolescence doesn't come with pimples, it comes with wounds, with calluses, with growing pains that hit both body and soul. There's that feeling that the world is far too big, and your village is far too small, and maybe you'll never get out of it. But you also begin to dream. You dream of forests beyond the hill, of markets filled with colors you've never seen, of cities where people speak different languages and don't know your last name or the smell of your clothes. You even dream of becoming a knight, even if the only armor you've ever worn was a pot strapped to your head. And even if the closest thing to a horse you've seen is your neighbor's donkey, who bites more than he walks. And then one day, without warning, everything changes. A group of religious men arrives in the village. They don't smile. They don't ask questions. They simply watch. And your mother stops singing. Your father grows quieter. There's a weight in the air that you don't understand, but you can feel it. A weight that smells like smoke and judgment. You don't know it yet, but childhood is gone. And your teenage years are about to end too. And your dreams? They'll have to wait. Because the world you barely began to know is about to swallow you whole. You're 17 now, and honestly, you should already be dead. Most of your childhood friends are long gone. Some taken by plague, others by hunger, a few by tragic accidents involving tools that were never meant for distracted teenagers. One choked on dry bread. Another tripped in the pen and landed face first on a plow. You somehow survived. Congratulations. But don't celebrate just yet. The truth is, even while still breathing, your knees are ruined from kneeling through endless masses, and your soul feels heavy with sins you're not even sure you committed. Your faith is strange, confused, rooted more in fear than devotion. But that's normal. After all, you were raised hearing that God is always watching, with suspicion. The priest repeats the devil lives where doubt exists, and you doubt constantly. Especially when your stomach growls, your mother cries in secret, and the feudal lord shows up to announce that taxes will rise again, this time in sacks of wheat. But today, something feels different. You are standing in the marketplace, surrounded by goats, barrels of dried fish, and an old man selling blessed amulets from St. Bartholomew, almost certainly made from rat bones. And then you see them. A group. Strangers. Too clean to belong in this God-forgotten village. They carry books. They speak real Latin. They have no dirt under their fingernails. They're monks. And among them is a royal scribe, his robe embroidered, his eyes steady, and his scroll more valuable than your entire life up to now. You there, he says, pointing. Can you read? You freeze. Words vanish from your mouth as if they never existed. But something inside you, maybe that childhood curiosity that somehow survived misery, whispers, say yes. So you do. They don't believe you. Of course not. But you spell out, slowly, the sign at the salt vendor's stall, sale without fair measure is forbidden. A miracle. They glance at one another. The scribe smirks. Come with me. And so you go. You leave everything behind. You don't tell your mother. You don't look back. This is your chance. A real one. The first. On the road, you don't sleep. You're afraid you'll wake up back in the stable. But no, you're really going to the monastery. You'll be trained. You'll learn. You'll live among paper, ink, and silence. The food is odd, but plentiful. The bed is hard, but it's yours, and no one hits you. At least, not yet. In the days that follow, you discover the monks live a brutal routine. Little sleep, endless prayers, hours and hours copying books. Some of them smile. Others seem like they've never heard a joke in their life. But you're there. And that alone feels unbelievable. You begin to learn more Latin, to understand the scriptures, to decipher symbols, maps, treaties. Your mind expands, and that, you soon learn, is dangerous. You begin to think for yourself, to question small things. Why are the rules the way they are? Why would God punish a curious boy? Why is knowledge so forbidden? But you keep it to yourself. You know, people don't like those who think too much. Until one rainy night, an old monk finds you reading something you shouldn't, an Arabic manuscript on astronomy. It wasn't demonic. It was science. But you know, to them, science and heresy are one quill stroke apart. You try to explain. You say you were just curious, that you wanted to understand how the stars move, that God made the heavens, so studying them can't be a sin. He doesn't answer. He just closes the book and walks away. You don't sleep that night. The next day, no one speaks to you. Your bread isn't at the table. And when you enter the scriptorium, the scrolls are gone. You're no longer called to copy. You're no longer called for anything. You feel the ground shift. Not from the heavens, but because the small world you had just begun to build is crumbling. Again. And finally, you realize maybe freedom never existed. Not here. Not back home. Only the weight of guilt, of eyes watching, of questions unasked. And that weight, you know it well. You take a deep breath. And for the first time, you don't pray. And in that silence, maybe your first real sin was born. You weren't expelled, but it feels like you were. It's been weeks since anyone last spoke to you. Your footsteps echo through the monastery halls like ghosts. Even the sound of the bells feels more distant. It's not excommunication yet, but you know you're already being judged. Not with words, with glances, with silence. You still live there, but you no longer belong. The monks look at you like a mistake in progress, a potential scandal, a book on the verge of being burned. And as every good medieval scribe knows, better to burn a suspicious manuscript than to let heresy leak through the margins. You've gone back to eating, but now the bread is cold, and only after everyone else has been served. During prayer, you feel the closed eyes of those who are simply too afraid to look at what you've become. But life goes on. The monastery turns like an old, merciless clock. Prayers, fasting, copying, fasting again. And in the midst of it all, you try to disappear, to become invisible, to pretend the curious boy died along with the Arabic scroll that vanished from the library. But deep down, he's still alive, and more restless than ever. One day, while cleaning the scriptorium, you find a folded note tucked inside the cover of an abandoned book. It reads, "Their right to be afraid." The handwriting isn't familiar, the meaning even less. You keep the note, but it burns. Burns in your pocket. Burns in your mind. As if it were written in sulfur and doubt. And then you start to notice everything. The elder monk now avoiding you even more fervently. The silence that falls every time you enter a room. The whispers behind columns. And most of all, the fact that you're no longer the only one thinking. One night, as you clean the altar, a young novice, yes, the monastery shelters, a few of them, leans in and whispers, "Have you ever noticed how the stars move?" You freeze. But she goes on, not the way the scriptures say, but the way they really move. She walks away before you can respond. But the spark has been lit. You realize there are others like you. Thinking, doubting, questioning, but always in silence. You form an invisible network. You never speak directly, but you recognize each other in glances, in gestures, in books exchanged more carefully than sacred relics. It's a pact. And like every secret pact in the heart of the Middle Ages, it's doomed to end badly. Because the monastery has eyes, and ears, and a ledger. Yes, a real book of suspicions. Every deviation, every absence, every lingering glance toward the stars, all recorded. And your name appears more often than you'd like. The scribe who once smiled at you now watches with the same expression one gives to detect rot in a barley loaf. One morning you wake up and your cell door is open. Rare. The air feels colder. In the refectory, no one speaks. In the scriptorium, no one copies. And in the courtyard center, the abbot waits. He calls your full name, the way your parents did when you'd done something very, very wrong. Follow me, you do. You pass through corridors you've never seen. Reinforced doors. Staircases that feel like they descend into another century. Until you reach a dark room. A book on the table. A crucifix. 3 monks. And you. It has come to our attention that your soul is at risk. You try to speak. But the air feels stripped from the room and from your innocence. They speak of penance, of confession, of atonement. But they also mention an ecclesiastical tribunal. The word hangs in the air like candle smoke. You try to explain that you didn't know what the book was, that you only wanted to understand, that studying the sky is praising creation, that you never questioned God. But your words fall like wet feathers, heavy, grounded, useless. They don't condemn you, not yet. But you understand. You return to your cell. The note is where you hid it, inside an old copy of St. Augustine, Their Right to be Afraid. Now, you understand. It wasn't about them fearing you. It was about you beginning to fear them. You lie down, and for the first time you think about running. Not out of panic, but for your sanity. The next morning, the monastery gate is locked, with more locks than before. You know something's wrong when a crowd gathers, and you're the only one without a chair. The whole village is there, but not to support you. They've come for the show. And surprise, you're the main act, or as they like to say around here, the heretic of the moment. At 17, you've become a problem in their eyes. You think too much, talk too much, question too much. And in the Middle Ages, that's a surefire recipe for disaster. You only want to understand why some people starved while the priest had more wine than blessings. You wanted to know why red-haired women got blamed for the rain instead of the clouds. You just wanted to understand. But understanding back then was dangerous. He talks to birds, someone says. I saw him drawing strange symbols in the dirt, another claims. He coughed 3 times on a Sunday. That one, indisputable. You're standing in the town square, and a priest stares at you like he already knows the verdict before it even starts. Because he does. A medieval trial is theater, a play with a script already written, a stone stage, and an audience made of neighbors hoping for blood to distract from their own emptiness. The charges? Witchcraft, heresy, disrespecting tradition, and the most serious of all, planting doubt in the hearts of the young. You try to defend yourself. You speak of the books you've read, the logic behind your questions, the dreams you have of understanding the world. But no one wants logic. No one wants to hear you. He's trying to confuse our children, screams a woman with 3 teeth and 10 kids. He's a servant of the devil, bellows a man whose only reading experience is the tavern sign. You're interrogated by monks with stone-carved faces and questions that would be laughable if they weren't so dangerous. If God is perfect, why do you question the church's rules? If you're innocent, why are so many people against you? And the best of all, do you deny that you can read Latin? As if literacy itself were an act of sorcery. During the trial, your mother weeps. Your father can't look anyone in the eye. And your best friend? He doesn't even show up. Probably stayed home. chewing stale bread and muttering, "Man, that's really unfair." The witnesses? Oh, they come out like ants to honey. Everyone has something to say. Even the kid you once saved from drowning swears he saw you talking to crows. The crow, of course, just wanted a crumb of your bread, but details like that no longer matter. The trial lasts 3 days. Not because there's overwhelming evidence, but because people enjoy drawing out someone else's fear. Pure entertainment. Medieval Netflix. And on the 3rd day, the priest with his booming voice and a face carved from stone delivers the verdict. Guilty. Guilty of thinking. Of being curious. Of being different. Of being born in a time that fears what it doesn't understand. You don't scream. You don't resist. You just watch. While the crowd cheers, while some cry, maybe from shame, maybe from fear they'll be next, you feel only one thing: peace. Because deep down, you always knew, from the moment you saw that crowd gather, with no chairs and hunger in their eyes. You don't go back home. Not to your cell either. You go straight to the chapel, or as you started calling it in your thoughts, the dressing room of death. It's strange. You don't feel anger, not even fear. What you feel is a kind of exhaustion that no amount of sleep could fix, as if you'd spent your entire life swimming against a river of stones, and now, finally, you've let your arms drop and started to sink. The priest assigned to hear your final confession sits across from you. He's young, maybe your age, but his eyes have long stopped searching for meaning in the words he repeats. He asks if you want to ask for forgiveness. You ask, "For which part of my life exactly?" He doesn't answer. He just sighs and begins praying, alone. You watch the stained glass behind him, the sunlight cutting through it as if the world outside were still beautiful. And maybe it is, just not for you. Hours later, they take you to your cell, a special one, darker, colder, and smelling of damp wood, perhaps an ironic preview of what's to come. That's where you spend the night. Or what should be night. Because time doesn't pass in there. It melts. Like wax. Hot. Slow. Inevitable. You try to sleep. But every time your eyes close, you hear the crowd's voices in your head. Those absurd accusations. Strangers' faces claiming you were a threat. As if seeking truth were some kind of plague. And maybe it is. But one that heals instead of kills. The next morning, no one knocks. They simply enter. 2 guards. A priest. A silence that roars. They take you without chains. After all, there's nowhere to run. There's only one destination now. And it's just a few steps away, the stake. You smell it before you see it. Wood. Oil. And the crowd. The mix turns your stomach. Not from disgust, but from knowing there's no escape. The square is full. Again. It might as well be a festival. Children on their parents' shoulders. Apple vendors. Old men with canes who can barely see, but wouldn't dare miss the show. After all, it's not every day they get to burn a curious young man. You walk slowly. Not by choice. Your legs have forgotten how to hurry. The world moves in slow motion. Each step feels eternal. Each stare is a blade. But something's different. Some eyes look at you with sadness, others with guilt. Maybe because deep down they know it's not you who should be up there. It's fear. And no one has the courage to burn that. You reach the center. The stake is tall, solid, grotesque, already wrapped in dry straw, prepared like a stage for a carefully rehearsed death. The guards say nothing. They tie your wrists, your ankles. The rope burns, almost as much as what's coming next. The priest repeats sacred words, but they don't sound sacred. They sound empty, as if even God had stepped away out of shame. You close your eyes, take a deep breath, wait for the fire, but it doesn't come right away. First silence. The crowd falls still. Even the birds disappear. Then the crackling of twigs being lit, and the scent of the end beginning. You hear the snap, feel the heat crawling up your legs. Your body trembles. Not from the fire, but from the realization that this is real. And then a scream. Not yours. Your mother's. She's there, behind the crowd, trying to reach you. Offer pushed back. Trying to reach you. Pushed back. Held down. Desperate. She screams your name like it still holds the power to save you. Like sound could extinguish flames. You open your eyes. Not from pain, but for her. And you smile. Not because everything is okay, but because for 1 second someone remembered you were human. You thought the pain would come first, but it doesn't. What comes is a deep, aching regret for forgetting the smell of fresh bread, the sound of the creak, the feeling of her hand pulling your ear, not out of anger, but with that crooked kind of love only a mother knows how to give. The fire rises, fast, then slow. It plays with you like a cruel child. Touches, retreats, kisses your skin before biting it. You don't scream. Not out of bravery. It's just that your lungs, they've forgotten how. For some time now, the burning has turned into silence. The crowd watches. Some cry. Others turn away. A few, the ones who think they're strong, try to keep their eyes fixed on you. But discomfort trickles down their foreheads as cold sweat. The priest is still praying. Something you don't hear. You're too busy replaying your life as if your mind were a library about to catch fire, and you're trying to save the most important books before everything turns to ash. You remember the tree where you hid for the first time. The smell of mud on the morning you realized you could think differently. The first time you touched a book so afraid it felt like a sin. The moment you knew it was one, and you wonder if you would have done anything differently. And it's in that moment, exactly that moment, that something changes. Not in the world. In you. Because now, in the middle of the fire, you finally understand everything that brought you here. The questions, the stubbornness, the hunger to understand, that was what made you alive. More alive than everyone standing there watching. You're not the problem. You're the mirror. And no one likes seeing what they try to hide. The smoke rises. Your eyes no longer see. But you feel. You feel that something will remain here. Not you, of course. Your body will soon be dust. But what you caused. The discomfort. The unanswered question. The seed of doubt planted deep in the soil of fear. That's what survives fire. It always has. Years will pass. Decades. And maybe someone in some forgotten corner of some distant village will repeat your words without knowing where they came from. Maybe a child will read something you once believed and feel less alone, less wrong. Maybe, just maybe, your death will spark a different kind of flame. You think of your mother once more, how she'll go on, how she might tell your story if she finds the courage, how her silence will weigh heavier than any cross. But you think of something else too. You think that, in the end, dying by fire is just a detail, because what they really killed was your right to ask. And then, absurdly, you smile again. A crooked smile, through clenched teeth and scorched skin. Because you know that even in silence, you spoke. Even tied down, you moved. Even dead, you lived. And they're still here, afraid. The fire crackles, the wood groans, the world blurs, and you don't say goodbye. You leave with a certainty fear can't read, but courage always writes. The morning after, the smell of burning flesh always feels colder. No one speaks of it in the village. Not the next day, not the next week, not ever, but something changes. Not in the sky, not in the ground, in the people. A different kind of silence hangs in the air, the kind that doesn't rest, that whispers, you're no longer there, but you are. Because every time someone passes the charred stake, they taste doubt, bitter and dry on their tongue. It's no longer about you, it's about them, about what they saw, what they allowed. A boy, with eyes far too large for his age, finds a button from your tunic in the ashes. He didn't know you, but he keeps the button, because something inside him says it mattered. And in that instant, without knowing why, he wonders why the rush to burn questions. Time passes. The straw is swept away. The marks are erased. New stories are told. But yours becomes restless dust, always on the verge of rising again. Because fear was never strong enough to burn memory. And courage, even dead, is far too inconvenient to bury. Whispers of the past slowly give way to firmer questions. Why were you accused? Why did no one step in? Why wasn't there a choice? Why did they call it heresy when it was only thought? And in that muffled echo that spreads like wind through half-shut doors, a new story begins. It isn't heroic. It isn't pretty. But it's real. And that's enough. You who were denied even a name on stone are now remembered in murmurs that disturb more than any scream. Because what lives in silence is the hardest to silence. The fire consumed you, but it didn't defeat you. Maybe one day, years from now, when someone writes about this village, your name won't be there, but the doubt you planted will be. And that is more than most ever leave behind. Maybe your mother will never smile the same again. But in the back of her eyes, when she sees a child ask a dangerous question, there's a strange light. A mixture of pain and pride, as if she sees you again, alive in the questions that still scare people. And that's the part no one ever understands about the Inquisition. It's not about purifying the world. It's about snuffing out the light before it shows the cracks in the walls. You were a candle. Brief. Hot. Uncomfortable. And now that you're gone, everyone sees the darkness more clearly. The boy with the button grows older. Learns to read. Moves away. Becomes someone. Someone who writes. And one day, scribbling thoughts on freedom, without knowing where it came from, he writes something like, "What kills a man isn't fire. It's the blind certainty of the one who lights it." The story doesn't end with a period. It ends with an ellipsis. Like every good story that survives the flames. Because where there's ash, there may be ember. And where there's ember, well, you know. But not all medieval suffering came from iron, whips, or fire. Some came in the wind, invisible, subtle, and fatal. When the last flame of the pyre went out, it was death's scent that filled the villages. And death didn't scream. It whispered. Now, close your eyes and imagine the sound of light footsteps in a silent alley. The plague didn't ask for permission to enter. It slipped in, hidden in fleas, in rats, in the very air. And what it took was never returned. This is the story of when the world fell ill, and of how, even in the face of death, some still heard secrets. You don't notice when she arrives. At first, it's just rumors. A merchant coughing blood on the road between Siena and Florence. A boy with black lumps on his neck. A priest who stopped saying Mass because all his parishioners died before the final Amen. But life goes on. The oven still needs to be lit. The well needs water. Horses don't feed themselves. Until one day you notice the wind has stopped. Not the literal wind, but that invisible breeze that keeps the village moving. The whispers between women, the clatter of carts, the hammering of nails at the marketplace stalls. All of it gone. And then you see it. A cart, standing still. No horse, just bodies. 3 of them, covered with linen cloth. And one of the cloths moves. Not from life, but from gases. The bloating of death forcing out one final grotesque breath. That's when you know. You're not safe. Your neighbor, the one who always baked herbed bread, hasn't left her house in days. The bakery is closed. And in the distance, a group of monks chants responsories while splashing vinegar on the walls. You lock yourself in. But the plague is a persistent lover. She knocks at your wood. She licks the cracks of the window. She climbs through the crevices in your denial. And at night, you dream of her, a thin woman with blindfolded eyes, whispering names you don't recognize. Or worse, names you do. She doesn't scream. She touches. And the next morning your father bleeds from his nose. You try to call for help, but the guards have burned the bridge. Contaminated zone, they said. One man tried to cross. They shot him with an arrow. He fell laughing. Now you understand. The plague isn't just illness. It's a chain reaction of despair. A theater of absences. Because she doesn't just kill bodies. She kills routine. She kills hope. She kills the habit of believing in tomorrow. The village begins to smell of vinegar, smoke, and fear. Someone draws crosses on the doors. Black ones. Sometimes read when the blood seeps through. Your little brother starts playing with rats. You yell at him. He cries. That night, he's feverish. You try to purify the house with salt and whispered prayers. But nothing masks the scent of wounds opening on their own. Your father dies on the third day. No one comes to take the body. So you drag him out with a blanket to the backyard and bury him with your hands. You swear you won't cry, but the plague doesn't want your tears. She wants what's left of your voice. And when you finally sleep, she returns, whispering, "It's not over yet." You wake up. The sun hasn't even dared rise yet, but there's something in the air that feels heavier than usual. It's not fog. It's not smoke. It's something else. Something that presses down on your chest, making every breath feel like a small effort. Outside, the streets are empty. More than usual. And the church bells, the ones that never miss a morning, are silent. You descend the stairs of the inn where you work as a helper, and you're met with the sharp, stinging scent of vinegar. Someone spent the night scrubbing the floors. Again. Old Arthur, the innkeeper, swears the smell of vinegar keeps death away. And maybe it does. Not the scythe-wielding kind of death, but the one that arrives quietly, hiding in the sweat of a traveler or in a drop of spit left on a badly washed mug. In the corner, a priest whispers with a woman in a dark veil. He's gripping his cross too tightly. And it's not just about faith, it's fear. The woman shakes her head, murmuring something about a brother who fell ill overnight. The same brother who unloaded barrels from the harbor. The same shipment where rats were first seen. You tried to pretend you didn't hear, but you did. Just like you heard the cart in the early hours collecting bodies wrapped in sheets, with bells tied to their ankles, bells that never rang. And that's the most terrifying part. They say the bells were meant to signal someone was still alive, but the last dead don't move anymore. Back in the kitchen, you realize someone's missing. Maria, always punctual, always complaining. Today, nothing. You climb the stairs to her room. The door is ajar. The room, dark. In the corner, a figure curled under blankets. You call her name. Only a wet, muffled groan responds. As you approach, you see her eyes open, staring at the ceiling. Her mouth slightly open. A trace of dried blood at the corners. Beside her, a wilted flower and a piece of untouched bread. You don't scream. You've learned that screaming doesn't help. You just cover the body and whisper a prayer your mother taught you when you were a child. One of those you never really believed in, until now. The village begins to change. People start walking around with cloths over their faces, soaked in oils and herbs. The wealthier ones wear beaked masks, grotesque bird-like faces. They say it filters the bad air. You don't know if it's true, but anything that hides your face from death's gaze seems like a good investment. On the streets, some say it's a punishment from God. Others swear it's the Jews poisoning the wells. And then there are those who say it's simply the end. The end of everything. The end of everyone. The town bell finally rings. But not for mass. For quarantine. No one in. no one out. You're trapped. Trapped with death, who no longer whispers. She speaks, in every cough echoing through the walls, in every knock at the door begging for help, in every candle burning in the windows of those already gone. And then you understand. The air wasn't heavy by chance. It was the world trying to hold its breath. Trying hopelessly to avoid breathing in the same sigh that so many others never breathed out again. Amid the constant fog that now seems to live in your village, a man appears. A different kind of man. He walks with a straight spine, an easy smile, and a hat that shines brighter than your hope. He carries a leather bag full of colorful vials, and a promise. He says he can protect you from the plague. You watch from a distance as he sets up his stand right in the center of the square, just beneath the statue of the local saint, who ironically lost his head to lightning last week. "Elixir of immortality," he shouts, as if selling miracles had suddenly become a legitimate trade. Desperate people crowd around him. And you, of course, get closer. Curiosity is a dangerous luxury these days, but it's all you have left. The man lifts a vial into the air, made of lavender, garlic, vinegar, camphor, and a touch of divine mercy. He swears that a sip a day keeps death away. You wonder if death is scared off by bad breath. Some people buy, others scoff. But what strikes you most is the sight of a knight. Yes, a nobleman. One who vanished from the village weeks ago, right after the first outbreak. There he is, dressed in plain clothes, paying with old coins and clutching 3 vials like they're the last shards of his soul. Days pass. The smell of lavender begins to fill the homes. It's almost comforting, until you realize the empty vials are piling up at the doors of those who, well, never came out again. The salesman carries on, but he's quieter now. His voice has dulled. You see him coughing, first discreetly, then not so discreetly. One day, he just disappears, and you don't need much imagination to guess what that means. They find his body 2 days later, lying beneath his own stand. His shiny hat covering his face, his pockets empty, and the smell of lavender so thick, even the funeral cart hesitates to approach. Someone mutters that he was just a fraud. Another says he was a good man, trying to help. You honestly don't know. But one thing is certain, even in death he seemed to smile. As if he left this world believing his own lie, or maybe hoping that this time, it might actually work. And that's when you understand, the plague doesn't only kill the body. It pulls hope out by the root. And what's left? People selling empty bottles. And others buying what little's left of their sanity, with faith. That night, you place a sprig of lavender in your window. Not for protection, but in memory. Because in the end, everyone here is selling something to keep from losing their mind. Even you. If silence could kill, it would have already been declared a plague. Not that the village was truly silent, no! It was a specific kind of silence. The kind that settles inside. The kind that fills the space between whispers and muffled sobs. You start to notice it. The village no longer groans. It simply breathes softly, like someone trying not to draw death's attention. It's in this heavy stillness that a figure appears. A boy. 8, maybe 9 years old. Barefoot. His face smudged with soot. His eyes far too large for such a small world. They say he lives in the ruins of the old church, the one that burned down and was never rebuilt. Some swear he was born there. Others say he simply appeared one day and stayed. But the strange part isn't the boy himself, it's what he does. The boy listens, not like someone curious, but like someone who already knows. He sits in the middle of the square and simply listens, head slightly tilted, body still as a perched crow, eyes that seem to see straight through walls. They say he listens to the dead. At first, you laugh. Of course you do. Who wouldn't? Until one cold morning, you watch him rise, walk to the baker's house, and knock on the door. No one answers. He simply says, "She's gone," then sits back down, That afternoon, the death cart stops at that very door. Coincidence, you tell yourself. Until it happens again, and again. And you realize no one's laughing anymore. No one even wants to walk near the boy. He's become something else. A bell that rings before the fall. Some say he hears the plague whispering names. Others claim it's just imagination. But what unsettles you most is his expression. There's no fear in it. No joy. Just a deep, unwavering sorrow, like someone who's seen too much to ever forget. You watch him one day. He looks at you. And for a moment, it feels like you've been read, scanned, unraveled. Then he turns his head, and somehow that brings more relief than you're proud to admit. A week later, word spreads beyond the village. A messenger arrives from another town, bringing tales of a boy oracle who predicts death. Some scholars want to take him away. A priest's mother says they should burn him before he invites the devil in. The truth is, no one knows what to do with what they don't understand. And then, he's gone. Just like that. No warning. No trail. Vanished like a sound swallowed by the dark. Some say monks took him to a secret monastery. Others whisper the plague chose him. But in the days that follow, the silence grows heavier. As if even the whispers themselves were mourning. You miss him, though you never spoke a word to him. Because for a brief time, you felt seen. Like someone, even in the midst of so much ending, was still listening. And now, without him, the world feels even quieter and crueler. In your window, hanging from an old nail, the lavender sprig has dried. You think about taking it down, but you can't. Not yet. Not while there are still whispers left to hear. You never quite knew whether he arrived on a black horse or simply appeared one gray morning. But one thing was certain. A man in a dark robe, polished boots, and a gaze that pierced more than it observed crossed the village gates as if he already knew exactly where to step, and as if he didn't expect to be questioned by anyone. His name was Bartolomeo, or so he said. He wore no visible cross, but it didn't take long for everyone to understand. He was an inquisitor. And where inquisitors walk, there is no room for doubt, only for confession. You were sitting on the inn's porch when he passed, and the silence that followed him was a different kind of silence. The kind that presses on your ribs. The kind that chills your spine. He didn't look at people. He measured them. They said he came from another city, one where the plague had begun to speak a little too loudly. According to him, it wasn't illness. It was heresy. Of course. Because in the Middle Ages, every fever was punishment. Every cough was witchcraft. Every woman with too much knowledge was a suspect. And at that moment, the plague was seen not as a disease, but as a curse. Or worse, a call from the devil. Bartolomeo moved quickly. He ordered the church to be cleaned, reorganized the priests' books, and questioned, one by one, the sick who could still speak. Curiously, more people died after his arrival than before. Coincidence? You couldn't say. Not officially. You saw him at work once. He was interrogating an old woman who sold herbs and who knew more about the human body than the village's own surgeon. She coughed during the conversation. She never returned home. That same week, 3 teenagers were imprisoned for hearing voices after running a fever. A miller was accused of feeding rats on purpose. None of them were seen again. But what disturbed you most was the fact that Bartolomeo never got sick. He walked into infected rooms, touched bodies with thin gloves, never so much as sneezed. Some said he was protected by God. Others whispered that he had made a pact with something far darker. You, however, suspected something simpler. He just didn't care. Not about the plague. Not about the dead. Only about control. One day, he gave a speech in the village square. He said the plague was a test, and the village was failing. That sin had seeped into people's homes, and only purification would bring the cure. No one asked what purification meant. Everyone already knew. The next week, the fires began. Small ones at first. Animal here, An object there. Then, people. You remember a girl who used to sing near the well. She danced under the moon one night, someone saw. That was enough. She was tied up, judged, and burned, all in a single day. Bartholomew claimed her song called The Spirits of Disease. You start to wonder who's really spreading the plague. One night, you heard strange noises coming from the church. You peeked through the window. Bartholomew stood alone, speaking to someone who wasn't there. Or maybe they were. No one dares question an inquisitor, not if they want to keep their head, literally. The village, already withering from disease, now began to rot from fear. And you could no longer tell which was more contagious, the plague or Bartholomew's gaze. And deep down, you understand, yes, the plague whispered names. But he was the one who shouted the verdicts. You've lost count of how many times you've woken in the middle of the night to the sound of coughing slicing through the silence of the village. But that night was different. It wasn't the coughing that woke you. It was the absence of it. A silence so thick you could almost chew it. Outside, the fog was heavier than usual. It swallowed houses, lanterns, even prayers. But it didn't swallow the sound that followed bells. The church bells rang on their own. 3 slow, dragging chimes, as if the iron itself was tired of living in that place. You dressed in a hurry, because yes, you're curious and foolishly brave. You stepped into the mist and realized you weren't the only one. Shadows moved between the houses, made of neighbors just as wary as you. When you reached the church, you found the doors wide open, something that never happened at night. And inside, the altar was empty. The crucifix had fallen, the floor soaked, but not with holy water. It was blood. The priest? Gone. And Bartholomew? Sitting in the first pew, completely still, staring ahead. Or rather, staring at something no one else could see. You'll never forget his face. It wasn't fear. It was rage. Not human rage, but something raw, feral. Like a man betrayed by the very forces he thought he controlled. He stood slowly, looked around, and said aloud, "The evil didn't come from outside. It was here all along." He offered no explanation. He just walked out. And the next day, the collapse began. First, the rats disappeared. Strange, because until then they ruled the village, scurrying through every corner, fleas clinging to them like charms. But now, nothing. Silence. Then the bodies began to appear. Stacked. Yes, stacked, as if someone had arranged them. But no one knew who, and no one knew where their families had gone. You heard stories of children talking to themselves, not in play, but as if following instructions. One girl said a hooded man asked her to put thorns under her mother's pillow, and she obeyed. The church was sealed. Not from the outside, from the inside. And no one dared to break it open. Bartholomew? No one saw him for days. Some claimed he was digging something behind the chapel. Others swore he locked himself in the confessional with a vial of poison and a mirror. You only knew one thing for certain. The village had crossed the threshold. The plague had changed. It was no longer fever and sweat. It was distrust. Paranoia. People stopped touching each other, even with gloves. They whispered. Some stopped speaking altogether. It felt like the whole village was trapped in a shared nightmare, and waking up was no longer an option. Even the bells fell silent, as if they too were afraid of drawing the attention of whatever might be listening. And you? You no longer knew if you were sick or simply too sane to stay. All you could do was watch. And that night, you swear you saw something high in the church tower. Something large. Something that looked back. But no one believes you, because now everyone's too busy listening to the whispers. Whispers that no longer come from the plague, but from the walls themselves. You wake up to the smell, and it's not the usual village smell. Damp hay, manure, or stale bread. This is something else. The kind of smell that settles deep in your nose and refuses to leave, as if it's trying to take up residence there. You know what it is. Death. But this morning, it's different. You can hear your own footsteps, because there are no others. No cries. No prayers. Not even the owls who until yesterday were the last living things still speaking. You walk down the main street and find doors wide open. Homes empty. Some with tables set, food still warm. Others with shuttered windows and torn curtains, as if someone had tried to leave or get in. A chill runs through you when you see a rocking chair still rocking, and no one around. The silence is so thick, you start to hear things. Words that aren't yours. Muffled laughter. Whispers from places where no one remains. And then you find it. The church. Only now, it's changed. The front is blackened. The windows shattered. And hanging from the bell like a twisted flag, Father Bartolomew's cloak. Yes, his. You take a deep breath. Convince yourself you have to go inside. Because if not you, then who? The interior is dark. Very dark. But on the altar, a single candle burns. Just one. And beside it, something scrawled in blood, we confess too soon. You don't understand. Or maybe you just pretend not to. On the floor, drawings. Not saints. Not crosses. Spirals. Eyes. Words in languages you don't know. Or worse, that you're starting to understand. You try to leave, but the door won't open. The wood groans, but doesn't give. When you turn around, the candle is no longer lit. You hear footsteps, not yours. And they're not hurried, they're steady, heavy, like someone who knows exactly where they're going. You hold your breath. Tell yourself it's a trick, an illusion brought on by the plague, the hunger, the sleeplessness, anything but what's actually there. And then you see it. Not the priest. Not Bartholomew. It's you. But not you. Pale. Aged. With hollow eyes, the same eyes the dead wore in this village. And he, or you, or it simply says you stayed too long. Then everything goes dark. You could swear you heard one last whisper. A name. Your name. But there's no one left to hear it. Days later, travelers pass through the area. They find the village. Empty. Silent. Untouched. In the center of the square, carved deep into stone, what stays silent keeps speaking. And the village is forgotten. Erased from maps. Its name? No one dares speak it. Because they say those who do hear the whispers of the plague that once had a voice. And you didn't last. Like almost no one did. You've heard of Mayan sacrifices, right? Those strange rituals with blood, serpents, and gods that seemed more ravenous than divine. But what almost no one tells you is what happened before the blade fell. Because before the heart was ripped out, there was a journey. A jungle. A calling. And a promise that you were going to serve the gods with your body and your name. And what if I told you no one left the Mayan temple alive not because they couldn't, but because they forgot who they were? Now close your eyes, take a deep breath, and imagine what happens when you get the call from the jungle. Because from now on, you're not just watching, you're the chosen one. You wake before the sun dares rise. The village is silent. But it's not a peaceful silence, it's a warning. The elders won't meet your eyes. The children don't come near. And your mother, well, she's already stirring porridge like you're heading out on a normal hunt. But you're not. Today, you've been chosen. The priests arrived the night before. They didn't say your name, but they said enough. The god Kukulkan demands honor, and the chosen must carry it to the temple. You knew what it meant. Everyone does. It's an honor nobody wants, but no one dares to refuse. You carry a small basket, flowers, jade stones, sacred grains. But you know that's just what people see. The real offering is you. Your feet touch the damp jungle soil. The forest feels alive. Like every tree is whispering in a language only the dead understand. With every step you hear drums in the distance. But there are no musicians, no village, just rhythm. A pattern like a heartbeat, but not yours. An older heart, a hungrier one. You cross a bridge of vines and rotting wood, balancing like someone walking the edge between the world of the living and the world of the forgotten. Each branch snaps like a warning. Each shadow feels like it's following you. And for a second, you wonder, what if I turn back? What if I run? But the jungle doesn't let you. It surrounds you, pushes you, traps you. Like it knows you belong to the path. You remember the stories whispered by firelight, messengers who got lost in the jungle and came back days later without eyes, or without tongues, or just a basket, still intact, left at the temple steps. A bird with red feathers lands in front of you. It stares like it knows. It doesn't sing, just watches. Then it flies in the exact direction you're meant to go. So you go. Because now, even nature seems part of the ritual. The air gets heavier. Sweat mixes with mud. The scent of the forest changes more metallic, like rust or old blood. And then you see it, the first sculpture. A massive stone serpent, obsidian eyes glowing, covered in moss and leaves but still alive. Its mouth wide open, as if it's about to swallow the path whole. And you have to walk through it. You hesitate, but you feel the ground gently tremble as if something is waiting on the other side. And you know that if you turn back now, you'll find the path behind you already gone. Inside the serpent's mouth, the light vanishes. It's like stepping into the belly of something ancient, sacred, and starving. You hold your breath. 1 second, 2, and then you see it. The top of a massive pyramid rising above the trees. Taller than anything your village has ever seen. Wider than 3 houses combined. And quieter than the forest itself. But somehow, it pulses. You don't understand, but you feel it. As if the temple has been waiting for you. As if it knows exactly who you are and why you're here. You descend the path. Every step is harder. Not from exhaustion, but because something is pulling you back. Something whispering in your ear that this place isn't for offerings, it's for devouring. The temple doesn't want flowers or grains, it wants you. And the moment you step into the clearing at the base of the pyramid stairs, the drums stop. Everything stops, like the jungle just held its breath. You've arrived. But not like someone arriving home. Like someone stepping into a tomb. You arrive at the temple. But not like a visitor, not like a guest, and definitely not like someone who'll be remembered after leaving, because, well, no one leaves. The trees part like they're asking for silence. And there it is, the temple of the eternal sun, massive, ancient, and about as welcoming as a blade's edge. First impression? It looks like it was carved angrily. The entrance is guarded by 2 colossal jaguar statues, mouths wide open, like they're ready to swallow you whole. A warm welcome if you were an offering. Oh wait, you are. 2 guards appear. They don't speak. Not a hello, not a good luck, not even the classic may your soul be welcomed by the gods. Nothing. Just stares. Bodies painted in red, feathers dangling from their heads. Hands gripping spears that look freshly sharpened. They guide you, or escort you, up steps covered in dark powder. Ash? Dirt? Dried. Blood? You're not sure. But it feels like every footstep here was made by someone who never came back. And then, you see them. The walls. They're not just walls. They're records. Faces carved in stone. Scenes of offerings. Rows of names. So many names. Some faded. some violently scratched out, the stone sunken under the pressure. And that's when it hits you. There it is, the name of your village, perfectly carved, fresh even, like it was etched just yesterday. And below it, your name, your name. You blink. Touch it. No, it's not a coincidence. It's there. But how? You swear no one knew you'd be chosen. Not your family. Not the old man who only talks to trees. Not the monkey that's been following you since the river. No one. So why is your name carved into a temple wall hundreds of miles from your home before you even stepped inside? Worse, why are there claw marks across the name above yours? Like someone tried to scratch their way out of the stone, or out of their own fate. One of the guards notices your hesitation. You expect him to say something like, "Don't worry, it's just a mistake," or maybe it's all part of the spooky branding. But he just turns his head and smiles. Not a kind smile, but the kind that says, "Oh, you noticed. That's a shame." You're led deeper into the temple. The air changes, thickens, like it's ancient. Heavy with breath that's not yours. Torches flicker along the walls. And everywhere you look, more carvings, more names, more stone eyes watching you. You try to stay calm. Think about turning back. But the path behind you is gone. Literally. The stairs you came up vanished into the dark. Like the temple swallowed them whole, or spit them out. In the heart of the gallery, there's a round stone. An altar, encircled by serpent sculptures. One of them has obsidian eyes, and they reflect your face back at you, twisted. You look at yourself, but don't recognize what you see. Then the priest appears. He doesn't speak. He sings. In a language that seems to scrape the walls. The guards respond. The serpents seem to grin. You just stand there like someone who showed up late to their own funeral. At the end of the chant, the priest points at you, and with a dirty fingernail, he drags it across your name on the wall. And then comes the only thing he says, quiet, almost offended. You are exactly where you're meant to be. You want to ask what that means. But your voice doesn't work, because deep down, you know. You've known since you stepped inside, since you saw your name, since you realized you're not being led to a ritual. You are the ritual. And those names on the wall? And those names on the wall? They weren't carved by priests, not by historians. They were carved by the temple itself. And now it carved yours. You wake up to the sound of rattles, but you're no longer in the hall of names carved in stone. You're lying, or better yet, arranged on a cold slab, wrapped in a simple white tunic, damp and stained. The smell doesn't lie. Someone wore this tunic before, and they probably didn't return it. You try to rise. Two arms appear from the shadows and help you. Not kindly, but with a steady calm, the kind of calm you use when handling something that's going to break anyway. A temple attendant, young, eyes hollow, begins painting symbols on your chest with a mixture of charcoal and blood. You pretend you don't know where the blood came from, but something tells you it was warm not long ago. Beside the slab, a steaming basin releases a sweet, rotting scent. The boy dips his fingers and rubs the thick liquid on your temples. Numbness hits instantly, like your soul is being embalmed before your body. Then the music starts. Heavy drums, deep and constant. Maybe from the walls, maybe the earth. You don't know anymore. Sound doesn't follow the rules here. It invades. People gather around the temple square. Simple folks, rough clothes, painted faces. No one talks. No one screams. It's like they all share the same thought. One collective thought that doesn't include your survival. The high priest appears, an imposing figure cloaked in green and gold feathers. In his hands, he holds something shaped like a heart. Maybe it's stone. Maybe not. He raises it to the sky, which answers with a thick, humid breath. Even the jungle seems to hold its breath. And then he points to the altar, to you. You're led forward. Your feet touch the temple steps. Each one feels carved by desperation. You see claw marks, scratches, like someone tried to slow down time with their fingers. You go up, one step at a time, not by choice. They push you. At the top, there's a long table, not wooden, volcanic black stone. At the center, exotic fruit, sacred flowers, and bones. So many bones, all sizes. The banquet has been accepted, announces the priest. His voice is both a blessing and a sentence. You still hope someone will say, it's just a ceremony. But no one does, because it isn't. The food isn't for you, not for the crowd. It's for them, the gods, the ones who demand flesh, not fruit. The priest steps closer. Your eyes meet. But he doesn't see a person. He sees an offering, an item, a letter, not a life. The body is the letter, the soul, the seal, he says. You want to ask what that means. But your voice has been stolen by the vines wrapping the temple. They lay you down on the altar. The sky darkens above you. Clouds move like they're answering a summons. The priest raises a ceremonial blade, curved, golden, but worn. It's seen too many hearts, and it's not ready to retire. But before it touches your skin, he stops and laughs. Not because he changed his mind, because something surprised him. You're still conscious, he whispers. Now you understand. Most offerings aren't. They're drugged, broken, gone. But you're still here, watching, feeling, and that is rare. Rare is valuable. He lowers the blade. You breathe. For a second, because then he calls the others. They're not going to kill you. Not yet. First, they're going to show you. Show you what happened to the ones who came before. You're dragged into a hidden chamber beneath the temple. A crypt, lined with embalmed bodies all curled in fetal position, like they were born backwards. Each one with an open chest. Each one with golden leaves covering the eyes. Each one, it seems, still whispering, low. In languages the world forgot, but not here. Here, nothing is forgotten, except you. You look around, all of these were offerings. All thought they'd be spared, that they were symbolic. But they became the main course. Now you understand. You weren't chosen, you were harvested. Ripe fruit, picked too late to stay on the tree. And the banquet? It's only just begun. The morning rises without a sun. Instead of golden light, there's a thick grayness, a feverish fog dripping from the sky itself. Still, the drums do not stop. Guards strike the ground with their spears. Children are lined up with flowers in their hair. Elders kneel and do not rise. Everything is prepared, as it always has been. You're bathed again. This time in something thicker, reddish, warm. There's no ceremony. No chance, just rough hands splashing it over your body, while others rubbed herbs across your face until your eyes burn. You're being presented, like a sacrificial animal on parade. The temple bells ring, 3 times. That's the signal. You're brought back up the temple steps, but now before the crowd. Men, women, children, all staring at you as if they already know what's coming. And still, no one looks away. The priest appears. His steps are slow. His skin is painted with ash and dots of blood. His eyes don't see, they remember, like windows into a time that never ended. He raises his arms. The people bow, and the sky answers. The first thunderclap cuts through the silence like a blade. Everyone's hair stands on end, lightning in the distance. Then again, closer. You look up. The sky is moving, swirling clouds like eyes opening. The trees bend with wind that doesn't come from the earth. And then lightning strikes the temple's peak, a blast of light and heat. A flash so blinding that the world disappears. And when your eyes adjust, they're clapping. Yes, applauding, as if it were a blessing. As if Kukulkan, the feathered serpent god, had just said yes, accepted the offering, accepted you, and that's when it hits you. No one's going to stop this. No pleading eyes, no hesitant hands, no tears. They believe. They believe you must die, that it will bring rain, harvest, protection, and more than anything, they believe that if they don't believe, they'll be next. You try to speak. Your voice is weak. Maybe even you no longer believe in yourself. The sky has heard, says the priest, and it has answered. He approaches and ties a jade thread around your wrist, a symbol of the passage between worlds. With the other hand, he covers your eyes. And in that brief darkness, you see, or think you do, a golden field. Men with animal heads. Children floating above rivers of fire. Cities that breathe. Hearts beating outside of bodies. Then the light returns. The crowd begins to sing, softly, in unison. A melody that isn't beautiful, but hypnotic. And with each verse you feel yourself weakening, as if the song itself were draining you. He is ready, someone whispers behind you. But you know you are not. The priest looks to the sky. Kukulkan, he calls. This one is yours. You take a deep breath, and the sky roars. Another thunderclap. So loud the earth trembles. This time, no applause. Everyone falls to their knees. Because maybe not even the gods have mercy on those who believe too much. You look around one last time, and everything seems at peace. But it's only an illusion. The true ceremony is about to begin. And it's not meant for the living to witness. It's meant for the gods to feast. Silence. A silence so thick it feels like weight. Not the kind you hear, but the kind you carry. You're alone now, or so they want you to believe. Locked in a chamber carved not by hands, but by claws. No windows, no exits, just stone, and more stone. Some cold, some warm, or try to, but you don't sleep, because there are voices, whispers with no mouths. Words in a language you don't know, but understand. Words that aren't heard by ears, but by bones. He is here, they say. Another fool? Another name to forget. You rise from a corner. The floor feels cracked. Or maybe it's you. A split in the wall glows faintly. On the other side, an eye. Not blinking. Not alive. But aware. And it smiles. From the inside. You try to ignore it. You breathe deep. Press your back against the opposite wall. Close your eyes. And hear them again. How many came before him? Many. They all forgot. Will he forget too? Forget what? You ask yourself. But deep down, you already know. Your name, your village, the color of the sky, the smell of fire. You are being erased, not violently, but slowly. A kind of hunger with no teeth. That simply empties. You find a symbol on the wall. A circle with 4 points. Familiar. An old mark from your village. Or a dream. You touch it. It warms. And a stone door slides aside, revealing nothing. Not a hallway. Not stairs. Just darkness. And from within, a laugh. High. Childlike. Then, silence again. You think of staying. But staying is dying. Or worse, forgetting yourself to death. You go in. The passage is narrow. You have to bow. Like the temple demands humility before it devours you. The air shifts. heavier, sweeter. You smell flowers. Flowers that only exist in dreams. Inside, a circular chamber. At the center, a stone table. Upon it, a mask. Like the ones the priest wore. But this one is alive. Yes, alive. As you approach, it turns. No hands, no face, just the mask. And it speaks. Are you ready to forget? You shake your head. It ignores you. You've already forgotten your mother, it says. Your village, the taste of maize, the sound of the river. You try to remember. What was your mother's name? Nothing. Not a syllable. In here, the mask says, we are not just flesh. We are memory. We are presence. And we are food. You feel something tug inside your skull, like your thoughts are being scooped out with a spoon. You step back. The mask laughs and vanishes. The walls tremble. The room floods with a red glow. You glance at the inscriptions. All of them are faces. All of them yours. But versions you've never been. Old. Young. Dead. You run. Back through the tunnel. The door you came from? Gone. You're trapped. And the only voice left is your own. But not for long. Because the temple is patient. It devours slowly. And you are just another name it will digest. Quietly. Fevered. Beaver. Cold stone cracks beneath your bare feet. Your toes are the only things trembling in that maze. Everything else is still, as if time inside this place had simply been forgotten. You are alone, or not anymore. The Mayan temple has no doors, only throats. Each hallway swallows you a little further. The shadows stretch unnaturally. The air reeks of hunger, not just of the body, but of memory, of spirit. You try to remember the way back, but it's like trying to recall a dream you never had. Everything shifts. Everything spins. The carvings on the walls aren't where they were. Or maybe you've passed them a dozen times. Or never. A sound. Low. Slow. Crawling. You freeze. It could be water dripping from the cracks in the ceiling. Or the echo of your own unraveling thoughts. But it's not. It continues. Steady. Rhythmic. As if something massive is dragging itself in the dark. Your breath quickens. Whatever courage you had left in your spine dissolves. You start walking faster. Every turn of the temple offers more stone, more shadow, more silence, and the sound grows closer. In one of the chambers, you stumble. Fall to your knees on the uneven floor. Fall to your knees on the uneven floor. Your hands smear into a mix of dust and old blood. And that's when you see it, a low altar, covered in dry flower petals. At its center, a weathered statue of Kukulkan, the feathered serpent. Its jade eyes still shimmer. Watching. Waiting. The sound stops. You don't turn around, not because you're brave, but because you've realized the real fear isn't being devoured. It's confirming you're not alone. You feel it. A warm breath against your neck. The scent of wet earth and burning incense. A faint brush against your shoulder, barely there. But when you turn, nothing. Or almost nothing. The altar has changed. The petals are fresh. The stone, clean. You rub your eyes, but it doesn't fade. Time here doesn't flow. It circles. And you are stuck in the center. A new passage opens where there was once only wall. You step through, and you see it. A massive mural, lit faintly by an opening in the ceiling. It shows an ancient ritual. Ceremonial figures surrounding someone kneeling. Above them, Kukulkan descends from the heavens. But the kneeling figure has your face. You move closer. You stare. It's not just similar. It's you. Your heartbeat pounds in your throat. The chamber dims. A whisper creeps across the ceiling and down the walls, like the stone itself is trying to speak or remember. He is here again. Not a voice, a thought, not yours, but inside you. You run, again, always running. But speed means nothing here. Every doorway leads to a staircase, every staircase to another room, and every room back to the same place. The temple has learned your steps. It adjusts, and then you stop. The crawling sound has returned, but this time it doesn't hide. This time you see it, just for a moment, a long shadow slipping across the corridor ahead, not walking, sliding, watching. You duck behind a pillar. Your heart thunders in your chest, so loud you fear it might give you away. But nothing happens. Silence. Again. The temple seems to fall asleep, but you know better. Something has awakened, and it waits. Not for you, but for the moment you believe you're safe. The serpent doesn't come for the worthy. It comes when your guard is down, when you think you've made it. And now you're learning the hardest way why no one ever leaves the temple alive. You sit on the cold chamber floor, exhausted. Your legs ache, your chest burns with every breath. There's nowhere else to run. You've tried every direction, every twist in the stone maze, and always return to the same spot. It's like the temple rearranges itself just to mock you. But now, what crushes you isn't the fear of death. It's the realization that maybe your death doesn't matter. Maybe your life never did. You lean your head against the damp wall, trying to recall your mother's face, the sound of your village, the smell of food during the harvest festival. But it's all faded, as if someone had poured water over your memories. And when you try to remember your name, the one whispered by elders during initiation, you feel nothing, just emptiness. A word at the tip of your tongue that may never have existed. The temple doesn't need blood. It needs silence, disappearances, people who vanish from time without leaving a trace. That's the sacrifice, the real one. Not blood spilled on an altar, but erasure. You stand barely and walk toward a narrow slit in the wall, where a lone torch flickers. The corridor leads to a chamber lined with hundreds of small stone plaques, each one carved with names. Names crossed out, erased, replaced with symbols you can't read. But the more you look, the more nauseated you feel. Because somehow, in a place deep and wrong in your mind, some of those symbols make sense. One of them is yours. You touch the stone. It's warm, not like fire, like skin, like something alive. A whisper slithers from the cracks in the central altar. You don't understand the words, but the meaning is clear. Here, the dead aren't buried. They're undone. The living who enter don't leave history, not even in the memories of those who loved them. That's why no one from your village ever returned. Not because they were killed, but because they were removed. The village still exists. The people continue, but piece by piece, they forget. The faces, the names, your absence. Your existence is diluted like pigment in water, too faint to leave color, too deep to stop hurting. You fight it. You punch the wall. You scream your name, a name you're no longer sure is right. You force yourself to remember the smell of wet clay from your home, your sister's laughter, the taste of stolen fruit from the market. But it all slips, like sand between your fingers. And when you finally stop screaming, you realize the sound never echoed. The temple absorbed even your rage. On the far wall, a different symbol glows faintly, like ancient gold beneath moonlight. It pulses, like a heart. You approach, and when you touch it, you're flooded with memories that aren't yours. Lives erased, cries silenced, stories no one ever heard. For one heartbeat, it feels like the temple offers a choice: surrender to oblivion, or carry the burden of remembering them all. You hesitate. But deep down, you already know. There is no choice. The temple decided long ago. And then the torch dies. Its flame snuffed by nothing. And with it goes the last of your memories. You still breathe. Still feel. But you no longer know who you are. Or why you're here. And in that moment, the temple seals itself in perfect silence. Because the last thread of your story has just been cut. The silence is now absolute. You walk like a body without a soul through corridors that no longer feel real. Your feet drag across the stone floor, guided by an instinct you no longer understand. You don't remember your name. You don't remember why you're here. But still, you walk. As if something larger than you, much larger, is pulling from deep inside. You turn the final corner and your eyes meet a faint light, filtered through cracks in the stone. You force your feet forward. The air here is colder, lighter. The stone underfoot is smoother now, polished, as if thousands before you walked the same path. At the center of the room is a spiral staircase, black, slick stone descending into the earth. You hesitate, but there is no way back. And so you descend. Each step feels deeper than the last. Not just a staircase, a fall. A slow dive into something that doesn't belong to the world of the living. And when your foot touches the final stair, you know. You are at the heart of the temple. The chamber is vast, unimaginably so. You cannot see the ceiling. The floor covered by a thin layer of stagnant water, reflecting the trembling flames of torches clinging to ancient walls. In the center, an altar, but not of stone, of bones, ribs, skulls, spines, some human, some not. Surrounding it are 5 massive sarcophagi, built of gold and carved stone. Each one marked with forgotten glyphs, with the faces of gods you've never seen in books. Gods who do not ask for worship, they demand presence, living presence. And now you understand. The temple was never a place of worship. It was a prison, not for you, for them. The 5 sarcophagi hold the kings who long ago crossed the line between man and divinity, and to keep them asleep, the temple demanded an endless cycle of living offerings. New souls, whole identities, entire lives erased, transferred, absorbed. That's what kept them quiet. That was the balance. And you are the final piece. The closing of a cycle that has repeated for millennia. The water begins to ripple, slightly, like breath. A deep creak echoes from the walls. The torches flicker, and the sarcophagi, they pulse. Not open, but throb, like golden hearts, hungry. You step back, but the stairs are gone, erased, as if they never existed. The entrance is now smooth, blank stone, cold, and silent. The temple seals itself once the final piece is inside. It always has. You run. You scream. You strike the wall. Nothing matters. The water rises. Now at your ankles, then your knees, and it's warm. Not like fire, like blood. The sarcophagi shine brighter. And then the final truth hits you. You were never a prisoner. You were the messenger. The bearer of life, the final vessel. The temple didn't want just your soul, it needed your body to reawaken the king who sleeps in the center. You look to the bone altar and see the space, exactly your size, as if it's been waiting. It has. The water now reaches your chest. You try to resist, but you have no strength. Not from exhaustion, but surrender. Something else is in control. You lie down. Without knowing, without fighting, without remembering why you ever should. The altar accepts you. The water stills. The sarcophagi goes silent, and the temple, content, closes its eyes for another 1,000 years. This is why no one ever leaves the temple alive, because no one enters the same, and no one leaves at all. Have you ever felt like a place was staring back at you? Not with eyes, but with presence. As if every wall, every stone, every breath of wind was judging you, and deciding whether you deserve to live another day? Yeah, modern science has explanations for almost everything. But there are places in this world that don't bow to theories, places that stare at your degree and laugh. This story doesn't take place in tropical jungles or medieval castles. No, it begins in the frozen heart of the Himalayas. Up there, where silence is heavier than snow and monks know things no one else dares to write down. You're about to meet a young scholar. Cold, cynical, arrogant. He thought translating a few ancient texts would be just another line on his resume. What he didn't know was that some words, when read, start writing you back. And now, good luck getting any sleep after this. You never believed in superstition. After all, you were an academic, a scholarship recipient at a respected Western university, armed with years of study, books stacked to the ceiling, and the quiet arrogance of someone who believed science was enough. But that day, as the helicopter circled the frozen Himalayas before landing, you realized your books hadn't prepared you for the kind of cold that seeped out of stone, nor for the eyes of the monk waiting for you at the foot of the cliffside monastery. The air was so thin you could feel your breath echoing in your chest. They called you by a name you didn't understand, but they never got your identity wrong. The monks were silent, but smiled with a kind of peace that felt offensive. Only one of them spoke English. Old, hollow-cheeked, with hands like dry branches, he said only this: "You've come too soon." But it was already written. The mission was simple, at least on paper. Catalog and translate fragments of ancient manuscripts recently uncovered in a collapsed temple chamber. Some were in Sanskrit, others classical Tibetan, and some were in languages you'd never seen before. That fascinated you. A challenge worthy of your bloated resume. You set up your little workstation between tapestries and braziers, surrounded by silence, hot tea, and a cold that crept in through the cracks in the walls like a curious spirit. The first night, you heard a sound. Not just any sound, a continuous murmur, rhythmic, like a collective breath rising from beneath the monastery and spreading through the stone as if the building itself had vocal cords. At first you thought it was the wind, then your imagination. But you noticed it always stopped the moment you tried to sleep, and started again when you opened your eyes, as if it knew. The manuscripts seemed to hum when you touched them. Literally. A faint tremor beneath your fingertips. You tested humidity, temperature, static. Nothing explained it. One text bore a symbol repeated again and again, as if it were a signature. A spiral turning into an eye. The old monk warned you this page should not be read aloud, and smiled as if he already knew you'd ignore him. Of course you ignored him. Of course you thought it was just local myth, the kind of warning science was born to disprove. But that night, as you tried to decipher the phonetics of the text, something strange happened. Your voice echoed, not in the room, but inside your head, as if someone else was repeating each syllable, half a second behind you. You stopped speaking. The voice continued. Just for a moment. The next day, the monks were different. Still silent. But their eyes avoided yours now. One of them, a young one, quietly placed a bowl of coarse salt beside your desk. Another left a necklace of black beads. And the old monk simply said, "Now, what's written on you can also be read." You started to feel watched, not by the monks, but by the stones, by the tapestries, by the shadows in the corners of the library. Even the pages looked older than they should have, as if they hadn't been written, but fossilized in an era that didn't know time. And when you began to dream in the words you'd read, even without understanding them, you knew something had been activated. And the echo of the ice, which once came from outside, was now coming from within. You wake with a cold that feels like it crawled up your spine and into your brain. The fire you swore you kept alive through the night is now nothing more than a cluster of ashamed ashes. And there's something even more unsettling. You dreamed, not of images, not of sounds, but of words. Dharmaraja is watching you. Who is Dharmaraja? Your first instinct is to consult the books, of course. After all, that's what you're here for, to catalog ancient texts the monks claim have never been translated into modern English. But as you open the manuscript from the night before, something's different. Small, but terrifying. A new line added between faded, near-erased characters, a Western traveler has arrived. And he will bring the end of stillness. Your heart skips a beat. That wasn't there yesterday. It couldn't have been. The paper is older than entire countries, and yet it's describing you, with a precision that doesn't feel like coincidence, or exaggeration. You close the manuscript slowly, like someone trying not to wake a sleeping dragon. The hallway outside is colder. Wind pushes through some unseen crack in the stone, but it's not the breeze that frightens you. It's the sound it carries. Your name, whispered, drawn out. Not like someone calling, but like someone marking. You follow the echo into a side chamber, where you find a wall covered in ancient Tibetan mantras, except for one section. Something or someone has scraped away part of the text, smearing it with what looks like ink and dried blood. In the gap, a name has been carved. Your name. But not your full name. Not in English. Not how anyone here could possibly know it. It's your nickname. The one only your mother used. One you haven't heard aloud since you were a child. Etched in a dialect you didn't even know existed. You don't feel fear in that moment. You feel certainty. Something in this place is conscious, and it's playing with you. One of the oil lamps flickers, then bursts. You stagger back, heart hammering like a ceremonial gong. On the floor, shards of glass, and a dark stain that begins to spread, like a shadow that's thirsty. The monks don't appear, not for tea, not for prayer. And you realize you are alone, but not abandoned. Not in the usual sense. Every corner you turn, something shifts just outside your field of view. A chime rings in a place where there is no wind. A murmur hums in a language that hasn't been heard since the Kushan Empire, until you return to your cell and find a new change in the manuscript. He must remember, or all will forget. Who must remember? Remember what? And if they forget? Forget what, exactly? But the bigger question is, why you? You, a mid-level academic from a mid-tier university who took the most remote job in the world in exchange for a few months of peace. And now, your peace is fractured, and the crack is widening. That's when it hits you. This isn't a monastery, not in the way you thought. These texts weren't just written, they were sealed. And you, with your bookish pride and your hunger to understand, broke what was meant to stay closed. And something got out. The wind returns, stronger now, and this time, it doesn't whisper your name, it sings it. But not like your mother used to, more like a warning, like a countdown. It wasn't just a name, it was a sentence. Rinpoche Khalzang. The name kept surfacing, in singed documents, in a charred scroll hidden behind one of the old tapestries and in a faded mural upstairs in the temple's attic. In each instance, the same hollow gaze. The same ceremonial Tibetan script carved as if it were a warning, encoded for anyone foolish enough to look. The first time you said his name aloud, the sound was swallowed by the stone walls. The second time, a bell rang by itself in the monastery's far hall. And the third time, the cold you felt didn't come from the mountain. According to legend, Khalzang was once a brilliant scholar. Obsessed. His hunger for forbidden texts pushed him past the limits of what even the most radical monks would dare explore. And then he vanished. Not died. Vanished. The monks never spoke of him again. Some whispered he had transcended, Others that he had been punished. But a third version existed, a theory shared only in hushed tones during midnight rituals, that Kalzang was buried within the monastery itself. But not symbolically. Literally. One sleepless night, you gave in. You crept toward the forbidden wing of the library. The door was sealed with melted wax, broken mala beads, and a silence that felt enforced by something older than time. A raven perched above the threshold stared at you. It didn't move. It didn't blink. It just watched. Inside, a corridor lined with deliberately excluded texts. Writings on soul transmigration. Annotations about folding time. And one uncategorized journal, hand-labeled Kalzang. Its pages were wild, unstable. Notes scrawled in a mixture of languages, Tibetan, Sanskrit, something else. He wrote about karmic echo experiments, where certain spoken words could summon not spirits, but events. Living memories. Kalzang believed history could be rewritten. That if a trauma was ritualistically repeated, in the right location, with the right emotions, it could become real again. Not in memory. In the present, you close the notebook. But it's already too late. The library shivers around you. The candles all extinguish at once. And when you glance back at the shelves, the notebook is gone. So is the raven. Only a trail of black feathers remains on the dusty floor. Over the following days, small changes begin. A monk you've never seen before appears in the dining hall. No one remembers him arriving, but they all treat him like he's been there for years. One of the shrine statues has a crumpled page resting at its base, a torn leaf from Kalzang's missing journal. And in the attic, where there was once only dust, now sits a single sandal. You try to tell the abbot. He closes his eyes, and says only, "You've set him free." The next morning, a new rule is posted. The library is closed until further notice. But that night, its doors hang slightly open. Inside, a lamp is lit. And among the stacks, a thin figure moves. Not walking, gliding. His robes, red torn, drag across the stone in complete silence. Kalzang is no longer a story, and you are no longer a guest. You are part of the narrative now, and it's being rewritten with you inside it. You wake up on what must be the third day, or the fourth. Time is slippery now, like snow in your palm, beautiful for a second, then gone. One thing is certain, you're no longer a guest here. You're a habit. And habits don't ask questions, they obey. Your new task is no longer dusting elegant calligraphy with soft brushes. That was for newcomers. Initiates. Now you've been assigned to catalog the containment manuscripts. You have no idea what that means. But one of the monks did smile when telling you. Not kindly, more like someone handing you a gift wrapped in fire warnings. The room you work in now is different. There are no candles, no windows, only a round opening in the ceiling, from which a thread of sunlight drops like a blonde hair left behind by the sun. The books? Not on shelves, in cages. Yes, iron cages. Locked with three-pronged latches. An elder monk, known only as Silence, gives you the keys. And a bell. You must wear the bell around your neck, he says. If you forget, they might think you're asleep. Then he disappears. You laugh. Classic monastic humor, right? Except no one here laughs. Not even when a book shifts on its own. You told yourself it was a draft. Then remembered, there are no windows. You choose the first. Key 11. The cover is rough. Too rough to be leather. A ridge down the middle resembles a stitched navel. You've seen horror films. You've studied theology. You're rational. This has to have an explanation. Right? Page 1, blank. Page 2, blank. Page 3, a single letter. R, it's distressed. As if burned into the page while screaming. You turn the next. Then Z, your spine stiffens. Could just be someone's joke. An unfinished message, right? You shut the book. Too fast. Your nail tears the edge of the page and a wet sound escapes. You freeze. No one comes. In the corner of the room, there's a mirror. Oval, old. You walk over. You want to see your face to confirm you still have one. But what looks back isn't you. It's someone with your face. But not you. It's you, aged, twisted, wearing silence's smile. You stumble back. The bell on your neck chimes softly. And just like that, the reflection disappears. You return to the table. The book lies open. Now the page reads a full sentence. If you keep reading, I will become you. You slam it shut. Lock it. Try another. Key 2. This one contains no letters, only illustrations. A man crushed by a staircase. Another melting while reading. A child with eyes sewn shut pointing at the moon. Your stomach flips. Not from food. From dread. The pictures move. Barely. Like slow animation. 1 frame per page. You shouldn't be seeing this. But you can't stop. A monk enters. No knock. Just appears. He looks at you. Then at the book. And without moving his lips says that book did not choose you. He approaches, places a hand on the cover, and carries it away. Like an injured animal. Or an old friend. That night, you fall asleep faster than you should. Later than expected. At midnight, a sound wakes you. Pages, flipping, rapidly, but you're not in the library. You're in your cell. The sound is coming from beneath your pillow. You light a candle, lift the cloth. Book 11. Wide open. Its last page now bears just one word, welcome. You wonder if the monks are hiding secrets. But now you're starting to understand. They don't know what's here, either. Because in this monastery, only the books truly remember, including you. You wake from restless sleep, the kind that feels like drowning just beneath the surface of memory. Your body aches, your breath trembles, and though you can't remember the dream, you know something in it was important, or dangerous. The room is dark, but outside a flickering light moves. Not moonlight. Something lit. Something burning. Then dong. A single chime. Low. Metallic. From high above. The monastery's bell tower. They told you that bell only rings during funerals, and only when the prior himself performs the rite. Brother Saiwang said the last time it rang was 11 years ago. Avalanche. 4 monks. Buried. But now, midnight. The bell tolls, and the prior is asleep. You're almost sure. You throw on your robe, hands shaking. The corridor outside is choked in quiet. The torches don't sway. The air is cold still. And then you see them. Footprints. Bare. Wet. Leading away from the tower. And ending against a smooth wall. Nowhere to go. As if whoever made them vanished. You make a choice. Upward. Toward the tower. The other option is pretending you didn't hear the bell. Your body won't allow that. Each step up the tower spirals deeper into unease. The air grows thinner, the stone tighter. Dong, dong. 2 more. Slower. Almost reluctant, like the bell itself is unsure. At the top of the stairs, the door stands ajar. A candle burns low, wax long dried into twisted roots over stone. You push through. Stairs creak. Walls flicker with marks, scratches, desperate fingernails carving mantras into stone. One reads, "He is not the one." Another, "Listen, but do not answer." And the last, freshly gouged, the tower calls to what remembers. You reach the bell. It is still. You saw it swinging from below, but now it hangs perfectly still. No rope, no mechanism. Only the bell, and you, and a wind not cold, but oceanic, salty. Ancient. You step closer. At the base, a new inscription, too clean, too sharp to be centuries old. Sanskrit. But you know the translation before your lips even move. He who climbs to answer the call shall descend as part of the sound. Your hand touches the bell. It's cold, but not metal, flesh-like. It pulses. You snatch your hand back. Dang. But not from the bell, from below. You turn. Nothing. No footsteps. But the sound is closer. And it's not echoing through the stone, it's echoing through you. You descend. Only now the path has changed. 3 staircases, identical. You pick the left. Heat rises. The air thickens. The monastery's logic begins to fold. Each wall etched in symbols, pictograms maybe. No, worse, they move when you look away, squirming between realities. Then, chime, right by your ear. You spin. No bell. Just a blur. Low to the ground. Fast. Not human. You run. Your breath burns. The steps shift up, down. You don't know anymore. There's a ceiling now. Low. Closer. Pressing in. You're being compressed. From far or near voices. Not language. Breath with intention. They know your name. They speak it without saying it. They know why you came, and why you never should have. You find a door. Iron. Rusted. You open it. A chapel. Circular. Small. Lit by something unseen. In the center, a pedestal. On it, a smaller bell. Bound in chains. Still. But vibrating. From the inside. You're not supposed to be here, but you are. And the bell isn't ringing anymore. It's whispering. Calling you. You never thought silence could scream this loud. Not until now. After the old monk vanished, and the heavy slam of the gate locked behind him, the monastery changed. The air thickened. Shadows grew teeth. Even the incense smelled different, and strangest of all, no one talks about it. You tried. You whispered what you saw. You asked questions. But the monks only smiled that same hollow smile and said you must be tired. Or worse, the wind here plays tricks on the mind. It's always the wind. So you return to the library. That room of heavy wood and no windows. The one where the books have no titles, and the shelves tilt just a little more each time you look away, like they're watching you and don't like being watched back. Today, something is different. A table has been placed in the center of the room. A single candle, already lit, burns low. You didn't light it. No one did. And on the table sits a book. Just one. Open all. Closed. With your name on the cover. You don't remember leaving a journal here. You don't remember writing anything with your name on it. But when you open it, you read your own thoughts. Not notes. Not recollections. Exact words you thought last night. Private things. Things you never said out loud. You close the book immediately. Step back. And hear a page turn by itself. The shelves seem taller now. The ceiling lower. And the silence heavier. You run. To the abbot. The one monk who might understand. He listens. Calmly. Too calmly. He says it's normal. True knowledge always requires sacrifice. Some words can only be written in ink made of identity. You leave with more questions than answers. But one thing is clear. The monastery doesn't just preserve scrolls. It archives souls. And somehow, you've become one of them. That night, you dream of being read. Not reading, being read. Invisible hands flipping through your life. Memories rearranged. Faces you barely remember, some laughing, some screaming, some staring at you, as if they already know how your story ends. You wake up sweating. Something's wrong. You try to remember your mother's name. Nothing. Gone. Just gone. At breakfast, you try to recall your hometown. All that comes is snow, wind, silence. You rush back to the library. The book is still there, now with more pages, more names, more memories, ones you never shared with anyone. Then it hits you. It's not recording your life, it's rewriting it, line by line, and every new page is a memory lost. You think about running, but where? You don't even remember where home is anymore. Maybe there never was a home. Maybe the monastery is the only place where you've ever existed. And the worst part? Maybe that's always been true. You try to rip a page out. Instant pain. Like something tearing inside your chest. Blood trickles from your nose. The candle goes out. Then, wood scrapes behind you. You turn. A bookshelf has shifted. A door. You step through. Another room. Secret. Filled wall to wall with books. Thousands. Identical. You pull one down. Another monk's name. Maybe the one who vanished. You open to the final line, and then he tried to forget he was being forgotten. The wind blows. Inside the sealed room. You turn back. Your book is gone from the table. Already shelved. Tucked away. Indistinguishable. Among all the others. And no one will ever know the difference. You try to avoid the library now, or at least pretend to, but it's hard to escape something that follows you. Every step through the monastery feels observed. Not by people, by walls, by shelves, by some unseen hand that records constantly your movements, your dreams, your doubts. Even your silences feel transcribed. And the other monks? They act as if nothing's wrong, or worse, as if everything is happening exactly as it should. That morning, a novice hands you a single sheet of parchment. No words exchanged. Just one sentence, scrawled in uneven ink. Not every scribe drops the pen when they die. You stare at him. He only smiles, the way someone would after delivering a grocery list. But the sentence lingers in your head, beating like a second heart you can't remove. That afternoon, you break a rule. You return to the back of the library. The area the abbot told you to avoid until the end of your formation. But your time already feels spent. Or worse, being stolen, line by line. Beyond the dust-choked aisles and unreadable manuscripts, you find a door. Iron. Slightly open. No one ever mentioned this room. No map shows it. No monk even looks this way. You enter. It's circular. Cramped. Stifling. Lit by suspended jars of flame, candles burning without explanation. In the center, a crude desk made of stone. And on it, scrolls, stacked. Crowded. Wet with time. And someone is sitting there. A monk. But not one you've seen before. His skin is thin as old parchment. His hands, skeletal, knotted, moving slowly. He's writing, with a quill dipped in something thick and dark. Ink, maybe, or maybe not. The smell hits you, rusted metal, mold, something like old blood. Then you realize he's not breathing. You hold your own breath, listening. No wheeze, no cough, not even the softest shift of muscle, just the quill. Scraping, endlessly. You move closer, and you see what he's writing you, every word, every action from the night before, even thoughts, even now. The quill slows, pauses. The monk turns to look at you, slowly, and you freeze. His face is dry, not rotten, not dead, but empty, as if time had dried all emotion from it, but left the structure intact. His eyes are dark, hollow, focused, and then he smiles. Not like he recognizes you, more like he's finished writing something cruel. And in that moment, you finally understand. He's not transcribing you. He's creating you, shaping your memories, tweaking your fears, composing your story. You're not living in a narrative. You are the narrative. You stumble back, then run. But when you leave the chamber, you find yourself in a corridor that shouldn't exist. Everything is almost the same, but not. The paintings show faces you don't remember. The plaques are in a language you half recognize, but can't read. You rush down hallways. 3 floors. 5. No dining hall. No courtyard. Just more doors. More stairs. Up. Down. Endless. And every path leads you back to the library. It is the center. It always was. The beginning. And the end. When you finally re-enter, your book is back on the shelf. This time marked with a ribbon of aged leather. You don't want to open it, but you do. The final sentence reads, "And so he returned to the beginning, believing he was choosing, but merely obeying the rhythm of the pen." You scream. No one hears. You make a decision. You'll leave. Not just the library, the monastery. Whatever this place is. Even if your memories are already dissolving like ink in water. But when you reach the main gates, they're gone. Where there was once iron and a road to the village, there is now only forest. Sick, ancient, and from behind you, the monastery's bells begin to ring. Alone, and all at once. You don't know how long you've been inside the monastery. The bells ring on their own. The library rearranges itself. And you're no longer sure of your name. It started with a translation, an ancient text. Just a request to help restore forgotten knowledge. But now, every word you read feels like it hollows you out. Every page turned costs you a memory. Like there's a hidden price to absorbing what was lost. You try to write your name, over and over, on your arm, on the floor, in the corner of your cell. But by morning, it's gone. Or worse, it reappears, written differently. Different handwriting. Different letters, as if someone is rewriting you. Food arrives, but you never see who brings it. Your clothes appear clean. The candles never burn out. And every day there's a new manuscript on your desk, waiting. Some of them in your own handwriting. You question your sanity, but realize you're not going mad. You're understanding. Words have power, literal power. That night you're woken by footsteps. Not soft, not human, dragging, wet. Bare feet on cold stone. You light a candle. The door to your cell is ajar. Outside the corridor is dark, but alive. Shadows move before you blink. You hear whispers, some in languages you've studied, others should not exist. You follow the sound. For once, you're not running away, you're going to the end. The path takes you to a tunnel that wasn't there yesterday. A spiral descent. Carved into the earth like a screw into bone. Symbols line the walls. Not Mayan, not Greek. Something older, or newer, or outside classification. At the end, a massive black wooden door. Carved into it, he who translates all becomes the last name to be written. You push it open. The chamber is vast, cathedral-like. The ceiling disappears into darkness. In the center, an altar. On it, a book. Open. Your name, or what you think is your name, is written at the top of the page. The rest, blank. You approach. The last line reads, "And so he entered the chamber, where the end would be the beginning." You swallow. Beside the book, a quill, an old bronze inkwell, emits a soft smoke. You reach for it. You don't want to, but you do. It's not ink. You know that smell. You've smelled it before, from the dead scribe in the iron room. You begin to write, but not your words. Your hand moves on its own. You're just the vessel. You write about the tunnels, the monks, The third day's book. The dreams you never told anyone. You're not telling a story. You're being told. When the paragraph ends, the quill drops from your fingers. The candle dies. Darkness swells. And then the sound of dozens of quills scribbling in unison. You are not alone. The walls you thought were stone are alcoves. Each holds a person, still, writing. Each with a quill. Each with a book. Each one you, copies. Each one you, copies. Versions. All writing. Living. Reliving. And then you understand you never came to translate. You came to be translated. This monastery is alive. It feeds on minds that understand. It doesn't want your help. It wants your belief. Because the more you believe, the more real it becomes. And the harder it is to leave. Light returns. You look at your book. The last page is still writing itself. And when he realized he was the book, he turned the next page. A voice behind you. Ready to begin again? You turn. The abbot? Calm, smiling. Like your first day. But something's wrong. He holds the same book you're reading. He offers it. You don't reply. You wake up. In your cell. It's your first day at the monastery. You don't remember arriving. But there's a book on your desk. An ancient manuscript to translate. You sit, pick up the quill, dip it in the ink. Outside the bells ring. Alone.